On June 25, 2026, Apple did something very unusual. Right in the middle of their product year, without launching any new hardware, they immediately raised prices across their lineup. MacBook Airs jumped by 18%, iPads by 20%, and the Apple TV spiked a massive 54%. When asked why, Apple offered a remarkable explanation. They claimed they had never seen a component price increase this much, this quickly, specifically citing the soaring cost of memory chips. Your laptop got more expensive because of a war being fought over tiny pieces of silicon thousands of kilometers away. This sudden price hike isn't standard inflation. It's the direct result of a global scramble for the hardware required to run artificial intelligence. For the first time, the massive, invisible spending spree of the tech giants has reached all the way into the consumer's wallet. To find out who is hoarding all these physical resources, we have to follow the money to just 4 corporations: Amazon, Meta, Google, and Microsoft. Look at the acceleration in their spending. In 2020, these 4 giants spent a combined $90 billion on physical infrastructure. By 2026, that annual figure has exploded to $725 billion, an 8-fold increase in just 6 years. While analysts were screaming to buy, the hardware boom hit a wall. On June 2nd, NVIDIA was worth $5 trillion. Just 3 days later, the market started to crack. NVIDIA lost $320 billion in market cap almost instantly, followed by double-digit drops from Micron and SoftBank. Observing this massive divergence between spending and market value, economic veterans like Ray Dalio have labeled this a textbook example of a bubble, one where the excitement over the technology has outpaced the actual revenue it generates. This $725 billion bet is being heavily fueled by debt. If these data centers fail to pay for themselves, that financial pain doesn't stay restricted to tech companies. It spills over into the broader economy. AI doesn't live in the ether. It lives in giant, windowless industrial warehouses filled with metal racks. Each one of these buildings can hold 100,000 NVIDIA GPUs. At $30,000 to $40,000 per chip, one building holds $4 billion worth of silicon alone. When you add the concrete, high-speed cabling, and massive cooling systems, a single large AI data center costs up to $25 billion to build. To pay for this, big tech is cannibalizing its own profits. This chart shows that infrastructure spending will consume 94% of their operating cash flow over the next 2 years. In 2023, that ratio was only 40%. Every dollar earned is being poured back into building more compute. These companies are betting nearly all their available cash on the single assumption that the world will need this much AI capacity forever. To justify this level of investment, the math has to work. JP Morgan calculated that the AI industry needs to bring in $650 billion in revenue every single year just to break even. But the actual earnings are nowhere near that target. All the major AI model companies combined are only generating about $75 billion a year. That leaves a staggering $600 billion revenue deficit. The assumption was that enterprise customers would fill that hole, but current data shows that 95% of companies are failing to see any measurable financial return from their AI investments. Major industry leaders are starting to revolt. Palantir CEO Alex Karp recently noted that many enterprises feel they are being overcharged for models that provide no actual value to their business. The cost is proving unsustainable, even for tech giants. Uber recently admitted that they exhausted their entire annual AI budget in just 4 months, forcing them to look for cheaper alternatives. This creates a fundamental disconnect. If the customers big tech is counting on can no longer afford the service, there is no one left to fill that $600 billion hole. To see where that missing money is actually going, we have to look at the manufacturers, like Samsung in South Korea, who control 90% of the world's memory chip supply. These factories had a choice: sell memory to consumer companies like Apple, or sell a specialized version to AI data centers for 10 times the price. They chose the data centers, shifting 93% of their production away from consumer electronics. This pivot created a massive shortage of standard memory. As a result, the price of the chips used in your phone and laptop increased by over 500% in just 6 months. Because AI cannot yet pay for its own infrastructure, the cost has been passed down the chain. When Apple raises its prices, you are now essentially paying the bill for big tech's data center expansion. This pattern follows a predictable blueprint called the capital cycle, where high returns attract massive investment until the market is flooded with more capacity than it can use. We saw this during the dot-com crash. Investors poured $500 billion into laying fiber optic cables, believing internet traffic would explode. But by the early 2000s, over 95% of that fiber sat unused underground. When the revenue failed to materialize, the companies that built the infrastructure collapsed. WorldCom and Global Crossing filed for the biggest bankruptcies in history, wiping out trillions in market value. The internet was real, and it did eventually change the world, but that didn't save the companies that overbuilt the infrastructure before the demand was ready to pay for it. If the current deficit isn't filled, the first possibility is a market crash. Spending stops, tech jobs disappear, and the Nasdaq faces a correction that hits the entire global economy. The second possibility is that big tech aggressively hikes its software prices to survive. AI tools would move out of reach for the average user, becoming specialized luxury services that only the largest corporations can afford. We are moving toward a reality where these powerful tools are no longer cheap, subsidized commodities, but high-cost industrial assets with a price tag to match. AI will undoubtedly change our lives, but the $725 billion bet to build it is a reckless gamble. And as Apple's price hikes show, the consumer is already paying the first installment.